Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time. This is our 12th class, and we are going to be reviewing Daf 79 through 85. And we're going to begin with the Mishnah at the bottom of Daf 78. So the Mishnah tells us that if a person, so today we're going to talk about, at least in the beginning, intent. Again, in order to be liable for capital punishment, you needed to have, I guess one would say like premeditated murder. You intended to do something and you went through with the act. So the Mishnah says that if a person meant to kill an animal, right? He was on a hunting trip and he meant to kill a deer, but by accident he killed a person, or he meant to kill a non-Jew, but by accident he killed a Jew, or he by accident he meant to kill a non-viable fetus, but killed a regular baby instead. They are not liable for capital punishment. Again, it's important to realize it doesn't mean that it's okay. It just means that they are not liable for capital punishment. Let's say they meant to hit a person, in their private parts in a certain area, but hit him in the heart instead, and he died. And it wouldn't have been strong enough to kill the person had they hit the person in the place where they intended to hit them. Again, they are not liable for capital punishment. Let's say they meant to hit somebody on the heart, right? But they hit them, again, on their private parts, and it wasn't strong enough to kill them, but he died anyway. Again, no capital punishment. Let's say you intended to hit an adult, but you hit a minor and he died. Again, not liable for capital punishment. Meant to hit a minor, and it would have been strong enough to kill him, but hit an adult and he died. Again, not liable. Meant to, again, hit somebody in one place, but hit them in the heart and he died. Now you are liable, because if it would have been strong enough to kill them in the other area and it was strong enough to kill them in this area and they died, so they're liable because they basically did what they meant to do. Let's say you meant to hit an adult and it was strong enough to kill the adult, and you ended up hitting a minor and he died. Again, now you are liable for capital punishment. Or even if he intended to kill one person and ended up killing another person, you are not liable for capital punishment. Again, it doesn't mean it's get out of jail free. It just means no capital punishment. Okay, so now the Gemara on Daf 79 explains that maybe the last case that we just said is only about the first case of the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon holds that, let's say Reuven and Shimon are standing together, and a person intended to kill one of them, and then he says, yeah, I don't really care which one dies, I just want to kill one of them. So according to Rabbi Shimon, he's not liable till you say, I want to kill Shimon, and you kill Shimon. That's when you're liable, meaning it has to be premeditated for that specific person. Again, that's one opinion. Let's say a person throws a stone into a group of people. If the majority of the people are not Jewish, so then he is not executed. Maybe even if there is one non-Jew and 9 Jews, because they're in the same place. If you remember, we had a very famous case, which is called, like in short, it's referred to as 9 stores. And it discusses, right, if you have, you see a piece of meat on the floor and most of the stores are kosher or not kosher, it depends what the case is, right? What is the probability that this piece of meat is kosher? And we say that if the item is not movable, meaning it's standing in its place, so then we say it's a 50-50 chance if that, again, in this case, if the person who would have been killed was a Jew or a non-Jew, even if the majority of people standing in the group were Jewish. The idea is every person, right, it could have hit him, it could have not have hit him. And therefore the person is not executed. And we also have a case, which I think is just important for us to mention right now, which is when we have a doubt in the case of capital punishment, we are lenient, right? Again, and I think many people have expressed this, we discussed very vividly what the capital punishment was like. And I think the Gemara is expressing that if we have a doubt, we're not going to kill somebody out if we're not 100% sure. And therefore, if we have a doubt, we will not kill the person. The Torah tells us a life for a life, but we know that when it says a life for a life, it does not mean you kill somebody. Rather, you pay compensation if you killed somebody by accident. And just like if a person hit an animal, you have to pay damages, whether you did it on purpose or by accident. So too with a person. And if it means you didn't mean it, it means you didn't mean to kill this person. And the Breita says that you're not liable for execution or even to pay money in that case. Okay, the next Mishnah on Daf 79. Let's say you have a murderer who gets mixed up in a group of people and you don't know which one is the murderer. You basically, nobody is put to death. Nobody is executed. Now we're going to learn about we'll call it a concept called the kippah. Kippah, not as in yarmulke. Kippah was a form of punishment that basically, if we think that a person is liable for the death penalty, but for whatever reason, we cannot execute them directly because, for whatever reason, some sort of bureaucratic reason, they are put in the kippah. The Gemara is going to explain that basically it's like a cell, like solitary confinement. And basically you feed them barley, and basically they die in this cell, basically. And the idea is it's not direct capital punishment, but basically we cause them to die in an indirect way. We'll discuss the case in the Mishnah in a minute. Let's say different people got mixed up, but all of them were liable for capital punishment, right? You have death row, let's say, and people of different punishments get mixed up. You kill them with the most lenient, right? We don't know who gets what, therefore everyone gets the most lenient capital punishment. And here, of course, if you remember, we had a machloket, which one is called the most lenient, right? Is skila, right? Is stoning more stringent, or is burning more stringent? And those are always, the top two. And then there's a machloket if beheading is more stringent or strangulation is more stringent. Okay, so now the Gemara explains what was our case. We said a murderer got mixed up in a group. So what does this mean? So the Gemara explains that the murderer who got a verdict was mixed up with people who were also being judged for murder, but they didn't get their verdict yet. And therefore, you can't kill anybody. And you can't judge them anymore because they need to be in court, and if we're not sure who's who, so then we're not sure who gets to get what punishment. Or maybe the case is where we're not talking about people, we're actually talking about oxen, right? If you remember in Baba Kama, we talked about an ox that gores a person and they die. So let's say you have oxen who killed a person, and everybody agrees that that if it hold on a second. Okay. So we see that these oxen who killed a person, they're compared to their owners. Therefore, if they're exempt from getting killed, because they're mixed up, and just like if people were mixed up, you wouldn't kill them. So to the oxen, we don't kill them, or maybe they are killed in the kippah, as we mentioned before. Daf 80 says maybe the case is different. Maybe the case is there are two people who are standing together and an arrow comes and kills a person, and we don't know which one of the two people shot the arrow. So both of them are exempt because we can't prove which one did it. And our Mishnah, and maybe that's one case, and our Mishnah is about an ox that was convicted, gets mixed up with regular oxen that did not kill anybody, and therefore you kill them all, or no, right, you put them in the kippah. Let's say a cow kills a person, and then, right, the cow is female, so the cow gives birth before the verdict. The calf is mutar, meaning one can benefit from the calf. If the calf is born after the verdict, so then you are forbidden from getting any benefit from the calf because it's seen as part of the animal, and the animal got a verdict of being killed. Therefore, the calf is also forbidden to get any benefit from it. But what if, right, if the calf was in the mother when it gored the person, and then it becomes forbidden, it's part of the mother. Therefore, only if the cow got pregnant after it gored, but gave birth before the verdict, then that calf is permissible for getting any benefit. And here we have a concept. The concept in Hebrew is called ze v'ze gorem. And that means that there are two things, ze, which is this, v'ze, and this, right? This and that, I guess we would say. When two things make one thing, so then we have a machloket if it becomes forbidden or it's permissible. What does that mean? The calf is made by the mother and the father, right? The mother is forbidden, right? You cannot get benefit from an animal that killed a person, but the father is permissible. So what is this baby, right? The calf. Is it like the mother or is it like the father, right? So it's basically a machloket. Right, if the mother is forbidden and the father is permissible, what is the status of the calf? So we say, therefore, it depends, right? If the cow got pregnant before the verdict and gave birth after the verdict, the calf is forbidden because it's part of the mother, right? It was inside the mother when the mother, i.e. the cow, got its verdict and was convicted. Okay, on to people. Right? If a person was warned for a stringent punishment, right? Don't kill that person because if you do, you're going to get killed. And then that person got mixed up with somebody else from a lighter punishment. We said that they get the more lenient punishment. So this seems to prove that if you're warned for a stringent punishment, it's as if you were warned for a less stringent punishment or more lenient punishment as well. The Gemara says, no, maybe the person was warned in general, right? Not with a specific, right? Don't kill that person or you're going to get killed, right? We didn't say how you were going to get killed. And therefore they could still get the more lenient punishment. And here's a machloket if you need to specify what type of death the person would receive. Okay. And the question is, do we learn it from we learn this from the Mikoshesh Eitzim, right? Mikoshesh Eitzim was the man in the desert in the time of Moshe who went out and transgressed Shabbat, and they didn't know what punishment he should get. And therefore, they must have given him a general punishment because they didn't know what punishment he was supposed to get. Or maybe no, in that case, it just happened to be that they didn't know the punishment. But in a regular case, you do need to give a specific punishment. Okay, so now the Gemara says, if people are mixed up and some of the people are supposed to get stoned and some of them are supposed to get burnt, everyone gets stoned. Right? Again, this shows that burning is more stringent. Or maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's because the majority of the people that were in the group were supposed to get burnt, and therefore that's what everybody gets. Or maybe we say that everyone gets burnt because stoning is more stringent. Okay, Daf 81. There's a case where a son said to his father, right, you shouldn't speak this way, or you're not doing the right thing. And the Gemara says you really should not say you're doing something wrong, right? You have to teach our parents, right, or teach people kindly. If you embarrass them, that's the wrong thing to do. And therefore, you have to be very careful when you're educating people on the right way to do things. Okay, next Mishnah on Daf 81. If a person is liable for 2 capital punishments, he gets the more stringent punishment. Again, don't get confused with what we learned before. That's where 2 people get mixed up. But if one person is liable for 2 different punishments, you get the more stringent one, right? A person can only die once. So you're going to get the more stringent punishment. If a person did one sin that should get 2 punishments, right? So the example is a person had relations with his mother-in-law and she was also married. So therefore, right, it's 2 different transgressions, but 1 act. You get the more stringent punishment, or you get the first punishment. And the Gemara is going to explain what this means. Okay, so back to the first case, the Gemara says, you might have thought that if a person was convicted for a more lenient death, and then he did something with a more stringent punishment, that he would get the more lenient one because that was the one he was first convicted. We say, no, you get the more stringent one. And we see there's a verse from Yechezkel that teaches about multiple sins, again, that you get the more stringent punishment. Okay. Yechezkel speaks about a person who doesn't need to draw from the merits of his forefathers, and a person who is humble and he didn't benefit from charity, right? And he is called a tzaddik, a righteous person. So the Gemara says, even if you just did one of these things, you would still be called righteous. Okay, we said that you would only get the first punishment. So what does that mean, the first punishment? So the Gemara says, again, the case was a man slept with his mother-in-law who was also married. So you get the first thing. What does that mean? Let's say first she was his mother-in-law and then she got married. So then he gets the punishment for sleeping with his mother-in-law. as opposed to, let's say, first she was married, and then he married her daughter. So then we judge, he gets the punishment for having relations with a married woman. Okay, next Mishnah. If a person got lashes and then transgressed again, did the same thing again, you put him into the kippah and till he dies, basically. So again, this seems quite harsh. So the question is, what are we talking about? So the Gemara explains that he got lashes for something that was liable. The punishment was karet, right? Karet is the most severe punishment, but it's something that's carried out by God. And therefore, in this world, you get lashes. And then the Gemara explains that we bring his death closer because he keeps continuing to sin. He just keeps doing it over and over again. Or, right, but if he does a different sin, you do not kill him, meaning it's only if he keeps transgressing in the same way. And here the Gemara discusses, does he have to do it twice, or does he have to do it 3 times? What is again, we've learned the concept of chazaka. Chazaka means we've created a halachic reality, right? When someone does something 3 times, it's as if that's now they're, the way they're going to do it. So the same thing here, right? The act of sinning creates a chazaka, or maybe it's the lashes that create the chazaka, and then there's a machloket if he has to do it 3 times, 3 times or 2 times. If they warned him, but he didn't respond, right? Maybe he didn't hear, maybe he didn't understand. So you have to do it at least 2 more times, or maybe even 3 more times. And then you put him in the kippah. What is the kippah? He is locked in a cell that is like his height, where he can't sit down. And the verse teaches that the rasha, right, the evil person, gets an evil punishment. And that is the punishment here. Okay, next Mishnah. If a person killed someone and there were no witnesses, you put him in the kippah and then he dies. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, what are we talking about? Right? It has to be that we know that he did it, but there were no proper witnesses to testify against him, or there was no proper warning, right? And therefore he gets put into the kippah. Okay, next Mishnah. A person steals, not regular stealing, don't worry, but a person steals or he blasphemes in the name of an idol, or he sleeps with an idolater. A zealot is allowed to come and kill this person. Okay, we're going to talk about what this means. If a kohen, right, if a priest serves in the temple while he is impure, they have to take him out of the temple and they kill him. And a non-kohen who serves in the temple gets either strangulation or he gets killed by God, meaning we don't kill him, Hashem kills him, because he is not allowed to do work in the temple. Okay, so the Gemara is going to explain this. What does this mean, a person steals? The Gemara explains that a person steals a utensil from the temple, meaning he steals something that is holy, that is sanctified. So then the zealot is allowed to come and kill him. What does it mean to blaspheme in the name of an idol? Right? It means that someone says, right, my idol should kill God. Okay, Daf 82 explains, if the zealot did not kill the person who slept with a non-Jewish woman, so then what is his punishment? So if he is a Torah scholar, he will not have children who know Torah. And if he is a priest, so his son will not be able to serve in the temple. And if he's a regular person, he gets karet. Okay, so it was said about Yehoiakim, right? He was a terrible king, that he died twice. So the Gemara wants to explain, what does this mean that he died twice? So it was written on his skull. The Gemara gives a very like Hamlet-like scene where they find his skull, and it says on it, this and another. And they interpret, Rabbi Chia interprets, Rabbi Chia found the skull and he kept it like wrapped up. And, he said, look, this is the skull of, I don't know how he knew exactly, but it was the skull of a king. So he kept it in a, I would say in an honorable way, but he didn't tell anybody about it. And then his wife found the skull. So the neighbors always like to start trouble. So the neighbor told the wife, oh, that must be the skull of Rabbi Chia's first wife, right? And he really, he really loved her, maybe more than you or something like that. So the wife took the skull and she burnt it. And the Gemara says, you see, he actually died twice, right? The first time when he died and the second time when he was burnt again. Okay, we said that a person who sleeps with a non-Jew is liable. So he's liable for 4 different things, right? That or 3 different things, right? She's in nida, she's not Jewish, maybe for like zona, maybe she slept with other people. If a person asks if he can kill one of these people, so you don't answer, okay? Because that's not what a zealot does. And now the Gemara is going to explain about Pinchas, right? If you remember, Pinchas is the zealot in the time of Moshe in the desert, right? Pinchas kills Zimri in the middle of the act. So if you remember, Bilam decides that he wants to get the Jews to suffer. So he gets all the women to seduce the Jewish men and basically to get them to serve idols and to sleep with them. And all of a sudden there's a plague and many people die. And Pinchas sees Zimri, who's the head of the tribe of Shimon, in the act. And while he's still in the act, he spears him. I don't know if that's a verb, but he kills him with his spear. And now the Gemara says that that's what a zealot does, right? They see something and they act right away. If they kill the person after the act, that is not okay. That's called murder. But if it's during the act, then it is okay. And the Gemara says that if Zimri wanted, he could have killed Pinchas because he's a rodef. He's trying to kill him. He could have killed him back, but he didn't because he was dead. Right, so Moshe basically tells the people to kill people who are doing idolatry, and Zimri was the leader of the tribe of Shimon, and he said that he was greater than Moshe, right? And he told Kazbi that she should sleep with him. Turns out she is also a princess. So Zimri said, you can sleep with me because, Moshe, he married Tzipporah, so I could sleep with you. And then Pinchas realized that he could kill Zimri because it was a chilul Hashem. It was desecrating the name of God. It's a machloket if he asks Moshe's permission or not, right? And he took a spear and he basically pretended that it was a cane and he snuck it into the area of Shimon, and then he kills Zimri, and basically 6 miracles happen, and he is saved, right? Nobody kills him, and he gets out of Shevet Shimon without getting killed at all. After this, it says that Pinchas davens. It says vayipalel instead of it says vayipalel instead of vayitpalel. And the Gemara explains that he was praying very strongly to end the plague, right? And he was a zealot, but he also calmed God's anger. people made fun of Pinchas that he had bad lineage, and therefore the Torah says no, he has good lineage. He comes from Aaron, and he gets the blessing of peace. Right, and then the Gemara discusses Zimri and Kazbi, right, who they were, what happened, right, how could Pinchas kill him, right, and Kazbi really had 5 different names, and it basically describes all the terrible things that they did. Okay, we said that a Kohen who does work in the temple while he is impure gets mita bidei shamayim, which means killed by God. But we could also kill him, or maybe he doesn't get killed by God, rather we need to kill him. Okay, if a person does the following acts outside of the temple, they are not liable, right? What are now these acts are done as part of the temple service, but they're not the end. They're just part of the process. And because they're part of the process, you would not be liable for doing them outside of the temple. So pouring oil on the mincha, on the sacrifice, on the grain sacrifice, mixing it with flour, salting it, weaving it, putting it to the altar, putting the bread on the table, on the shulchan, preparing the menorah, not lighting the menorah, but preparing it. If you take off from the grain offering, if you catch the blood after the animal was slaughtered. So for these also, you're not liable if it's done by a non-Kohen or if somebody was impure. Again, because we said it's not a completing service. But if he burns the komets, the mincha offering, he would be liable for death. Or no, you're liable, but only for lashes and not for death. Daf 83, if a non-Kohen would do this, they would be liable for death. If a impure Kohen does it, they would be liable for lashes. And then, wait a minute, so if it's lashes, then the other actions are even less than that. So we say maybe they're only derabanan, they're only rabbinic. And then the Gemara discusses who would be liable for death, right? A person who eats produce that you didn't separate the ties, the trumot and masrot, or an impure priest who ate from the truma, or a non-Kohen who did work in the temple, or a impure Kohen who did work in the temple, or somebody who went to the mikvah, but it's still the same day and it hasn't become night yet. That's called tvul yom. A tvul yom is not allowed to do work in the temple, and a Kohen is not allowed to do the work in the temple unless he washes his hands and his feet. So too, a drunk Kohen is not allowed to do work in the temple, and so too a Kohen who has long hair, right? The Kohanim needed to cut their hair every 30 days. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so all of the people I just mentioned are liable for death if they do the actions that we mentioned. However, a person who their immediate, a Kohen, whose immediate relative died and they haven't been buried yet, that's called an onen. They're not supposed to do work in the temple, but if they do, they are not killed. A person who is uncircumcised, and if a priest does one of these actions while he's sitting, right? You're not allowed to work in the temple and sit. These people only get lashes. They do not get capital punishment. And a person who has a blemish, it's a machloket. And so too a person who does me'ila, right? Me'ila is misappropriating sanctified utensils or things. If you did it on purpose, you get death, or it's only lashes, right? And the Gemara basically goes through each one of the things that we just mentioned and shows it gives a verse that proves each one of these things. And just like an impure priest who eats truma gets death penalty, so too, if a regular person eats produce, right, what's called tevel, which is produce that we didn't separate truma and maaser. Okay, if a non-Kohen eats truma, he gets capital punishment, or maybe not. Maybe it's a machloket, and maybe he does not get death. A non-Kohen who does work in the temple, the verse says that they're going to get death. Again, an impure priest who does avodah, who does the worship in the temple, gets death. And it's learned from someone who eats truma. He also gets death. Okay. Next. Okay, we talked about the Tvul Yom. Tvul Yom is a person who went to the mikvah that day, but they're not considered pure unless the sun goes down, meaning till the next day. Again, just to remind you, in the time of the temple, men and women who went to the mikvah to purify themselves, other than for menstruation, for nida, would go to the mikvah during the day. Only a nida, a woman who menstruates, goes to the mikvah at night. Everyone else went to the mikvah during the day. And depending who you are, you would become pure either right away, right? So if you were not a Kohen and it was just about being pure, so you were pure right away. But if you were a Kohen and you wanted to eat truma, you needed to wait till the nighttime. Or if you were a Kohen and you wanted to do the temple service, you needed to wait till the next day. Okay. Also, a Kohen who doesn't have all of the proper priestly garments, right? We learned about them last week in the Parsha. There are 4 priestly garments for a regular Kohen and 8 for the Kohen Gadol. So if you were missing one of them, you would also be liable for capital punishment. Also, somebody who needed to bring a korban, if they didn't bring, needed to bring a sacrifice, if they didn't bring the sacrifice, they could not do the work in the temple. We said if you didn't wash your hands and feet, also capital punishment, because it says if you wash your hands and your feet, you will not die, right? Velo tamutu. That would imply that if you don't do it, you will die. So too if you're drunk, and so too if you did not get a haircut. Okay. But we said if the person doesn't have a circumcision, a brit milah, he does not get capital punishment because it's learned from Yechezkel, and Yechezkel is a prophet. And since it's learned from the prophets, you cannot get death penalty from something from the prophets. It has to be something from the 5 books of Moshe. Daf 84, we have a verse that teaches that the Kohen Gadol, who is an onen, somebody died, an immediate relative died, he cannot leave the temple, and he must continue working, right? Because he is the Kohen Gadol. But everyone else, right? All the other Kohanim, they have to stop working. They are not allowed to do work. But again, they're not allowed to do the work. But if they do, it is not capital punishment. Again, the Gemara brings a verse that says that you have to stand and serve, therefore you cannot sit. And if you do, you get punished, but not capital punishment. And as we said, right, a non-Kohen who does work in the temple might get executed, or, right, and what is the punishment? Is it killed by God? Is it killed by the court? And if it's killed by the court, right, does he get stoning or strangulation? With that, we finished the 9th parak, and now we are going to begin the 10th parak. Okay, the Mishnah tells us that, again, we've done 3 out of the 4. We're going through who gets each punishment. So who gets strangulation? A person who hits their parents, a person who kidnaps a Jewish person, and a sage who rebels against the court, a false prophet, and someone who prophesizes in the name of an idol, someone who commits adultery, and someone who tried to get the daughter of a Kohen convicted for adultery, and he becomes an Ed Zomem. Remember, he is basically a false witness. So then he gets, even though the daughter of the Kohen would get burning, that's her punishment, he does not get burnt. He gets chenek, which is strangulation. Okay, so now the Gemara explains. There's a verse that says that if you hit a person, mot yumat, right? You're going to get killed. And because it doesn't identify what type of punishment, we say that you get chenek. Chenek is strangulation. You might have thought that you need to kill the parent. Maybe it's only if you kill your parent. The Gemara says, no, even if you hit your parent, but you do not kill them, you are still liable. The verse teaches that you get capital punishment if you kill an adult or a child, but you do not get capital punishment if you kill a non-viable fetus, meaning a fetus that was not going to live. When we say hit a person, it means to actually cause a wound, but you're also liable. So for an animal, you're liable if you weakened the animal, even without a wound. But if you wound an animal for therapeutic reasons, you are exempt. So too with the parent. If you, right, you can, the Gemara discusses, are you allowed to bloodlet your parent, right? It causes a wound. It might be painful. The Gemara says yes, because of the hafta l'reacha kamocha, right? You would want someone to bloodlet you if you were in pain, so you're allowed to do it to your parents. Some sages did not allow their children to do it because, they were concerned that they would be liable, so they didn't let their children do it for them. You are allowed to remove a splinter with a needle on Shabbat. We're not concerned that maybe you might inadvertently wound the person. By the way, I totally remember that my mother did this to me when I was 6 years old. I had a huge splinter in my knee, and she took a needle and got it out. It was really not fun. But the Gemara says you're allowed to do that on Shabbat. Okay, Daf 85. Now, since we're talking about parents and children not being allowed to harm their parents, can the court appoint the son to go and curse or hit his father as a punishment from court? Meaning, the father was convicted for something, and the court wants to give him a certain punishment, can the son be the one who carries out that punishment? So the Gemara says, maybe yes, because it's a mitzvah, right? It's the verdict, or maybe no, because again, it's, get somebody else to do it. If a person was being taken out to be executed, if his son, now we're going to learn in a minute that if someone's going out to be executed, they're as if they're like dead man walking, right? They're not really alive because they're about to be killed. However, right, if his son comes and curses him or hits him, the son is still liable. If anyone else comes and curses him or hits him, they are exempt. Maybe we're speaking about a man who doesn't want to go, right? What's the case? So the Gemara says maybe the case is the man needs to go and get executed, and he doesn't want to leave his house, the jail. So his son, who happens to be the police officer, comes and hits him to go out. Is he liable? So the Gemara says, right, if that's not the case, and it was a regular man who hit him, he would be exempt. Because again, it's as if he's dead already. And therefore, with a son, it would be different. Let's say you embarrass a person while they're asleep, and then he dies, meaning he never wakes up, meaning he never really knows about it. You are still liable. Therefore, if you hit a man going to be executed, you should also be liable. So the Gemara says, well, maybe the case is that you create a wound that's worth less than a pruta, right? Like a very minor wound, and then maybe it wouldn't count, and therefore you would be exempt. But then maybe you should get lashes. So you're right? If you don't get lashes, maybe you're also exempt from paying, but maybe you would still be liable for lashes. And we say, no, you are exempt from lashes. The verse teaches that a person is liable if he's liable for capital punishment and he didn't act properly. A person didn't act properly, therefore they are convicted of capital punishment. Therefore, you would not be liable if you curse him or you hit him. And the Gemara says that a son is not allowed to curse the parent, even if the parent is dead, right? Meaning like they don't even hear it, you're still not allowed to do it. And therefore, the son cannot be a messenger of the court unless the father is a mesit. Mesit means a person who convinces people to worship idols. Then that's really, really bad. And then the son can punish him. Okay, not the last Mishnah yet. Second to last Mishnah for today. You are liable for hitting a parent if you cause the wound. And we said you cannot curse a parent even after they die. But if you hit the parent after they died, you are exempt. This is based on a verse. The Gemara says that anybody who curses is liable, whether it's the son or the daughter. And it doesn't matter if it's the parents together or just one parent and not the other. A person is liable for striking any parent, even if the parent does not keep mitzvot, right? Even if they sin, you are not allowed to hit your parents. But for cursing your parents, you're only liable for cursing a law-abiding parent. But if they are not law-abiding, you are not liable for cursing them. You're also exempt for hitting maybe a sinful parent or maybe not. Okay, now last Mishnah for today. If a person kidnaps a Jew, right, a person, you're only liable if he brings him into his own domain or if he uses him in some way. If you kidnap your own son, you are liable, which I think is fascinating, just very modern. Or maybe you're exempt, maybe less modern. And if you kidnap a person who is half slave, half free, you are still liable, or maybe you're exempt. So now the Gemara explains, again, if the person is kidnaps a person and they use him for work that's worth less than a pruta, so then he would not be liable. The Gemara comes up with a few interesting scenarios. You kidnap a person and sold them while they were sleeping, and they didn't, like, you weren't able to use them, or you kidnap a pregnant woman and you sold the right to the baby but not to the mother. So how does this work, right? So would you be liable or not? So the Gemara constructs the case how the kidnapper does use these people, right, leaning on them or using them to block him, but the Gemara ends with teku. We're not sure what the law would be. You're liable if you kidnap a person who kidnaps, whether they're a man or a woman, they're liable. And you're also liable, whoever you kidnap, male, female, child, adult. If you kidnap someone but didn't sell them, you're exempt. Or if you sold him, but he's still in your domain, you are also exempt. And if you sold him to his parents or to his relatives, you are still liable. And if you kidnap a slave, you would be exempt. And the Gemara ends by saying maybe if you sold the let's say the child back to the parents, you might also still be exempt. Okay, we will pick it up next week. I think next week, actually, the class is going to be on Tuesday night. Let me just confirm that. But I will send an email before. Yes, the next week's class is going to be on Tuesday night. But I will send a message before that. Yes. Any questions, comments? We have a few minutes. Yes.
I love it when you tell me I misunderstood. So get ready. Did you say when a rock is thrown into a group and you kill a non-Jew, you are, if you kill a Jew, you are liable for capital punishment. If it's a non-Jew, you're not. Did you say that?
I did say that. There's a different punishment depending on who you kill. There is a different punishment. It does not mean that it is okay. It just means that it's a different punishment. Different, that's all it means. It doesn't mean like there's still, again, for all these cases where I said not liable or exempt, it doesn't mean go out and do it. It means there's a different punishment. That's all it means.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you, you could just, I'll be quick. You could take an entire year and give all the rationale for all the decisions they make, because my brain feels like it's dangling.
It's a lot. Don't forget, we are learning it at top speed. Normally people spend, months on these pages. They are quite complex.
Good.
And
I hope that they're so rational.
Yes.
Is the punishment less?
I'm going to say the punishment is different. We will learn it as we continue, but the punishment is different. Again, it's always a conversation, right? Let's say I say God is going to punish you and not the court. Is that better? Is that worse? Right? How do we see things? So according to the Gemara, I think it's relative how you define worse and better. So I would rather say different punishment.
Thank you.
Yes. And God makes sure that everybody gets what they deserve. So there is justice in the world. We just don't always see it. Yes. Sorry. Sarah. I think you're muted. Here, I can.
Thank you.
Okay.
I had a question from way back in the beginning when you were basically saying that intent is everything, that if that you're punished according to the intent.
Yes.
But if you meant to kill someone, and didn't, and it struck them, and and with all intention, and didn't, there is no particular punishment?
Um, um, correct, correct. Meaning, intent is very important, but in the end of the day, the action is what counts. So if you intended to kill someone and you're like a really bad murderer and you just can't figure it out, and you end up not killing the person, you are not punished. Again, does God, figure things out? I would assume, but in that case, if the action, there's a line in the Gemara. I don't remember what Masechet, but there's a line in the Gemara that says that intent matters, but it's always going to be in your favor. So let's say you intend to do a mitzvah, but for some reason you got distracted and it didn't happen. God gives you credit for doing the mitzvah. But if you had an intent to do a sin and you didn't, God, gives you credit for not doing it. So it's always going to work. It's always going to work in your favor. Meaning ultimately it's about actions. But if you want to do good things, you get bonus points for wanting to do good things, even if it doesn't happen. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome.
Did I hear you say a blessing on the third time you took a drink, or was that?
No, I've been.
I know. Okay. I'm still trying to get it pinned down.
Yes, if you're constantly drinking, you don't have to make a new.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So
I'm tired. Even if you're not, I'm tired.
No, wishing everyone a meaningful fast tomorrow. Tomorrow's the fast of Esther. Again, I see mostly women here, or all women here. So it's really the holiday of, I think, women's empowerment. So enjoy that, and Purim Sameach, as they say here. Happy Purim, and wishing everyone a wonderful Purim, and see you next week.
See you on Tuesday.
And Shabbat Shalom.
Okay.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay. Purim Sameach, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.